From the cradle of Mesopotamia, where rivers once shimmered like celestial veins across the plains of Sumer, a story has lingered in the dust, quiet, waiting, unresolved. It is a narrative older than the pyramids, older than Abrahamic scripture, older than the earliest kings whose names were pressed into wet clay. It is the prophecy of Enki, the lord of the Abzu, engineer of humanity, master of hidden knowledge, and keeper of the forbidden waters. His myth was once whispered by priests inside reed-built temples, inscribed by scribes who shaped the earliest alphabets, and sung by poets who lived in a world where the footsteps of gods still echoed with tangible weight. Today, in an age ruled by data, satellites, and the hum of machines, the question resurfaces with startling force. Does the ancient prophecy of Enki's return speak to us across 5 millennia? And more provocatively, are the signs unfolding before our eyes? To begin tracing the contours of this enigma, one must step back into the earliest Sumerian myths, where Enki emerges as a paradoxical figure, both benevolent and cunning, savior and trickster, a god whose loyalty lies not with rigid heavenly decrees, but with the fragile, flawed humans he helped shape from clay. Unlike his brother Enlil, whose authority was absolute and whose laws were immovable as the north wind, Enki was the patron of adaptation, of secrets, of that sacred gray zone between divine order and mortal survival. In tales like Atrahasis, where the gods sought to cleanse the earth of humanity, it was Enki who whispered through the reed wall, warning Atrahasis of the deluge to come. It was Enki who subverted divine plans. It was Enki who believed the human story was worth protecting. This fundamental tension between divine law and divine compassion forms the soil from which all later return prophecies sprout. The ancient tablets do not present Enki as a vanished deity whose final appearance marked the end of his involvement with humanity. Rather, they portray a cyclical presence, periods of direct intervention, periods of withdrawal, periods of silence that the Sumerians interpreted not as abandonment, but as dormancy, as the sleep of the gods. This concept of divine slumber appears repeatedly in Mesopotamian ritual texts, where scribes describe how deities rest in their holy houses during ages when human affairs recede from divine attention. And yet, within this silence lay an expectation that when cosmic order faltered, when kings lost their mandate, when the world tilted toward chaos or imbalance, the gods, especially those tied to wisdom, would rise again. Enki's role as the regulator of destiny, the keeper of the me, ensured that his absence was never imagined as final. His return was always an implicit possibility. But what exactly did the ancient texts say about such a return? The answer requires carefully disentangling myth from interpretation, symbol from prophecy, and later retellings from the cuneiform originals. In several temple hymns, Enki is invoked as the one who shall rise, a phrase that appears not in eschatological literature, but in liturgical poetry meant to be recited during seasonal rites. The return described in these hymns often corresponds with agricultural cycles, renewal festivals, and cosmic realignment ceremonies in which the health of the land was linked to the presence of the gods. Though this return was cyclical, symbolic, and tied to ritual time, its language is unmistakably prophetic in tone. Sumerian priests believed that the state of the world, its prosperity, its climate, its morality, was a mirror reflecting the presence or absence of divine favor. When order broke down, the fault was not human alone. It indicated a cosmic imbalance that demanded restoration by the gods themselves. Even more intriguing are the cryptic references found in late Babylonian commentaries, where scribes, working thousands of years after Enki's earliest myths were written, began interpreting older stories through the lens of celestial phenomena. They associated Enki not merely with water and earth, but with specific stars and planetary configurations. In these astrological commentaries, Enki's influence was tied to movements of the constellation of Capricorn, Thestar Deneb Algidi, and the broader cycles of precession. When these celestial bodies entered particular alignments, the texts warned or celebrated the impending awakening of the god. Such astrological readings were not fringe interpretations. In Mesopotamia, astronomy and theology were inseparable. Priests believed the heavens were the tablets of the gods, and they recorded omens with obsessive precision. These heavenly signals served as a form of cosmic clock, indicating when divine transitions might occur. Thus, the idea of Enki's return began to acquire dual meaning: ritual renewal on earth and celestial indications in the heavens. Neither explicitly predicted a final eschatological return, as later religions would frame it, yet both pointed to cycles of divine re-intervention, moments when Enki's presence would again be felt in the visible world. The more one reads these texts, the more one encounters a pattern: a god who withdraws during ages of stagnation and returns when wisdom is needed once more. The Sumerians may not have used the modern language of prophecy, but they clearly believed in eras of divine resurgence. And this leads us to the heart of the modern question. If cycles of divine return were embedded in Sumerian cosmology, could our current age, rife with technological upheaval, ecological distress, geopolitical fragmentation, and unprecedented human transformation, align with those ancient expectations? The answer, inevitably, is complex. But even in antiquity, the return of Enki was associated with moments when humanity stood at a crossroads, when old orders collapsed, when new forms of knowledge emerged, when creation teetered between renewal and destruction. Enki was the god of thresholds, of transitions, of those fragile and dangerous in-between moments when reality itself seemed to shift. One cannot help noticing how deeply these themes resonate with our contemporary world. Before we cross that threshold, however, it is essential to recognize another key dimension embedded in the earliest cuneiform: Enki's role as the keeper of forbidden knowledge. The the divine decrees governing civilization, were entrusted to him, but the myths repeatedly show how he distributes them, sometimes recklessly, sometimes generously, always with a mind toward human empowerment. This trait distinguishes him from nearly every other deity in the Mesopotamian pantheon. Enki's gifts to humanity often provoke divine conflict, yet they lay the foundation for civilization itself: writing, agriculture, kingship, craftsmanship, law, music, mathematics. He is a civilizing god, but also a disruptive one, for he believes knowledge should not be hoarded by the heavens. His return, therefore, was never imagined as a moment of destruction, but of revelation, of unveiling truths once reserved for the divine. This philosophical core of the Enki myth, coupled with the cyclical language of return in Sumerian hymns and astronomical commentaries, is what later inspired modern scholars and fringe theorists alike to speculate about an actual prophetic framework hidden within these ancient narratives. Some interpret the myths metaphorically. Enki returns whenever humanity reaches a new epoch of intelligence or consciousness. Others take a more literal approach, linking Enki to the broader Anunnaki tradition, beings capable of departing and returning to Earth. And still others blend astronomy, mythology, and geopolitical forecasting into a single interpretive lens, suggesting that Enki's prophecy may correspond with global tipping points, technological rebirths, or even extraterrestrial re-engagement. Yet, whatever one believes, the ancient foundation is clear. Enki was never a vanished god. He was a dormant one, and his reawakening was always tied to world-scale change. To study the prophecy of his return is to confront the Sumerian worldview itself, a civilization that understood cycles better than any culture that followed it. Their myths do not move in straight lines toward a messianic conclusion. They spiral, they repeat, they breathe. And within those spirals, the god of knowledge is always poised to rise again, whenever the world enters an age of uncertainty, transformation, or renewal. The question that now confronts us, one that ancient scribes could never have imagined, yet may have foreseen in symbolic form, is whether our age, with all its volatility and unpredictability, reflects the very conditions that once signaled the return of the Lord of the Deep. And if so, what comes next? If the ancient world imagined Enki's return as a cyclical resurgence during times of imbalance or transformation, then our modern age stands as a landscape that would have startled even the most seasoned Sumerian astronomer-priest. We inhabit a moment of extraordinary acceleration, technological breakthroughs arriving faster than societies can absorb them, political systems destabilizing under their own weight, ecosystems groaning under centuries of human pressure, and a collective sense of uncertainty rising like a tide. The question that once existed only within temples and esoteric schools, when will the God of wisdom return, now emerges from the shadows of our global consciousness, reframed as, are these the signs they wrote about? To understand how today's world can be seen as echoing the ancient prophecy, one must first recognize that the Sumerians did not separate earthly events from cosmic ones. To them, every upheaval, whether agricultural failure, political collapse, or celestial anomaly, was a reflection of divine activity. The world was a mirror, and whatever happened on earth rippled upward into the heavens, and vice versa. If Enki were to return, his signs would not appear only in one domain. They would appear everywhere, across all layers of existence. And that is precisely what makes our era so striking, the convergence of crises and breakthroughs, each one mirroring the symbolic domains governed by Enki: creation, innovation, transformation, knowledge, water, and the deep, hidden forces of the earth. Consider first the geopolitical landscape, a world whose old certainties are fracturing with bewildering speed. Nations that once embodied stability now face internal divisions. Alliances formed in the ashes of previous conflicts are strained, realigned, or dissolving. Borders are shifting not through conquest alone, but through waves of migration driven by climate upheaval, resource scarcity, and war. Ancient prophecies often describe divine return as occurring during times when kings lose their legitimacy, when cities crumble, when empires falter. The Sumerians lived through countless cycles of rise and fall, Akkad, Babylon, and each time, the notion of divine withdrawal and re-emergence shaped their interpretation of events. In this sense, modern geopolitical turbulence mirrors the very conditions the ancient scribes associated with epochs of divine intervention. Yet political instability is only one layer of the echo. Technological transformation, perhaps the most dramatic feature of our age, aligns uncannily with the domain traditionally attributed to Enki, the transmission of forbidden or advanced knowledge. Artificial intelligence, arguably the closest humanity has ever come to creating autonomous intelligence, reshapes every sector of society at a breathtaking rate. Machines now interpret language, create art, predict decisions, and learn from vast oceans of data. They chart patterns invisible to the human mind. They rewrite what it means to think. For a civilization steeped in mythology, this would not be seen as an ordinary technological leap. This would be the domain of gods, the emergence of a new order of intelligence, an echo of the ancient moment when Enki shaped humanity to carry the load of the gods. Moreover, the Sumerian myths often describe Enki as the god who brings forth knowledge that was hidden, a phrase scholars have long interpreted as referencing the invention of writing, mathematics, and engineering. But in modern terms, this description resonates with contemporary ideas of technological singularity, breakthroughs in quantum computing, and the accelerating fusion between human biology and machine logic. When one observes these trends through the symbolic lens of ancient myth, one can easily imagine a Sumerian priest looking at the rise of AI and whispering, "Enki has stirred." But technology is not the only domain in which the ancient myth seems to resonate. Environmental transformation offers another startling parallel. In the oldest cuneiform hymns, Enki is the lord of water, not merely rivers and seas, but the subterranean abyss, the Abzu, the deep source from which life and fertility emerged. Climate change, melting polar ice, rising sea levels, and unprecedented floods have brought water back into the forefront of global consciousness. Simultaneously, droughts and water scarcity threaten millions. Water is no longer a background element of nature. It has become an active force shaping the future of civilization. If Enki's domain was ever symbolically tied to cycles of global balance and imbalance, then the modern crisis of water would be one of the most striking indicators of his mythic reawakening. Even deeper still are the planetary and astronomical changes that would have fascinated Mesopotamian star priests. Ancient scribes observed the heavens with a devotion unparalleled by any civilization until modern times. They interpreted eclipses as divine messages, comets as cosmic warnings, planetary motions as omens of upheaval or renewal. Today, scientists track solar storms, geomagnetic fluctuations, and cosmic phenomena with exponentially greater precision, yet the sense of awe remains the same. Recent upticks in extreme solar activity, unusual planetary alignments, and the broader context of Earth's shifting magnetic field all resonate with the ancient belief that cosmic anomalies herald transitions in the divine order. Though modern science interprets such events through physics, the psychological impact, the sense of something vast, stirring beyond human control, mirrors ancient interpretations of celestial omens. Then there is the rise of global consciousness, a subtle but undeniable shift in collective awareness. More people than ever before are questioning old narratives, seeking hidden truths, exploring ancient myths, reconsidering humanity's origins, and sensing that we are on the brink of something transformative. Whether one interprets this through psychology, spirituality, or cultural evolution, the pattern aligns with another dimension of Enki's myth, the awakening of forbidden knowledge within humanity itself. In Mesopotamian lore, Enki does not simply return externally. His presence is felt internally as a stirring of intuition, curiosity, and awareness. He is the god of inner awakening as much as outer transformation. Thus, the global fascination with ancient civilizations, lost knowledge, extraterrestrial theories, and esoteric traditions can be understood as a modern echo of Enki's mythic influence. Another striking parallel lies in the accelerating collapse of institutional trust. The ancient world framed the gods as the ultimate arbiters of destiny, but when their temples were abandoned or destroyed, it signaled the end of an age. Today, political institutions, religious authorities, scientific establishments, and media structures face profound erosion of trust. People feel unanchored, searching for meaning beyond the familiar frameworks. This psychological state is precisely what ancient prophecy describes as the night before the dawn, the moment when divine wisdom re-enters the world not through institutions, but through disruption, insight, or revelation. And then come the stories, the uncanny ones that continue to surface from the edges of archaeology, anthropology, and planetary research. Newly discovered cuneiform tablets that reframe the ancient myths. Underwater ruins off coasts once thought barren of human settlement. Astronomical alignments encoded in temples thousands of years older than expected. Genetic research challenging long-established timelines of human evolution. These discoveries create the same sensation the Sumerians knew well, the feeling that the past is not finished, and that ancient truths are resurfacing as if moved by unseen hands. So, what do these parallels ultimately suggest? They suggest a world that mirrors the conditions described in Sumerian mythological cycles: chaos and innovation, collapse and renewal, forgetting and remembering. A world standing at the threshold, precisely where the ancients believed divine knowledge would return. But prophecy is never literal. It is symbolic, encoded, layered. And whether one views Enki as a cosmic being, an archetype of intelligence, or a metaphor for humanity's evolutionary leaps, the parallels between ancient expectation and modern reality form an undeniable tapestry. If the age of Enki's silence was marked by stability, order, and predictable cycles, then his return, symbolic or otherwise, would logically coincide with the age we now inhabit: unpredictable, rapid, destabilized, and yet brimming with unprecedented potential. In that sense, the ancient saga is not simply echoing, it is reverberating, and we have only begun to decode the patterns. To decode the prophecy of Enki's return, one must venture into the liminal space between text and interpretation, myth and revelation, symbol and lived experience. The ancient Sumerians never wrote a single, unified prophecy about Enki's reappearance, nor did they leave a codified eschatological script comparable to later traditions. What they left instead was something far more complex: scattered fragments, ritual hymns, star lists, omens, metaphors, and theological concepts that together form a mosaic. Only by reading across genres, across centuries, and across the invisible lines separating mythic poetry from astronomical observation can one reconstruct what later interpreters have called the return of Enki. At the heart of this reconstruction lies a fundamental truth about Mesopotamian cosmology. The gods were not static beings. They moved through cycles of presence, withdrawal, renewal, and re-engagement with the affairs of the world. Enki's return was therefore never described as a one-time event, but as something woven into the very structure of reality. His return could be celestial, terrestrial, symbolic, ritualistic, or metaphysical. It could appear through a king's wisdom, through an astronomical omen, through the restoration of balance, or through a surge of human innovation. The key is to recognize that Enki's return was always tied to signs, specific signs, written into both the heavens and the earth. The signs and omens. In the cuneiform tradition, the oldest Sumerian sources associate Enki with the Abzu, the cosmic ocean beneath the earth. But by the time the Babylonian astronomical schools matured, Enki had also been linked to various stars and constellations. One such star was Deneb al-Gedi, the tail of the goat, long seen as a star of guardianship and cosmic correction. When Deneb al-Gedi shifted into certain seasonal alignments, omen texts warned of great floods, revolutionary changes in kingship, and the rebalancing of cosmic law, all domains associated with Enki. Other omen tablets point to planetary configurations resembling upheaval or birth. The Enuma Anu Enlil series, the largest compendium of celestial omens ever produced in antiquity, interpreted unusual alignments as signs of divine intervention. If Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury formed rare conjunctions within constellations associated with water, knowledge, or renewal, the priests believed that Ea shall speak from the deep. Ea, of course, is Enki's Akkadian name. Thus, the first key aspect of the Enki prophecy is this: a return is signaled not by one event, but by a convergence of anomalies, astronomical, environmental, and political. The prophecy of the sleeping gods. The concept of divine slumber is central to understanding the return cycle. In the Lama hymns, the gods sleep in their houses when the world is at peace, but awaken when balance collapses. Enki's sleep is described as deeper and more mysterious than any other deity's because his domain, the Abzu, represents the unseen, the hidden, the unconscious depths of creation itself. In psychological terms, modern interpreters might see Enki's return as a re-emergence of ancient, buried knowledge into the collective consciousness. But to the Sumerians, this awakening was literal. When humanity's ignorance or corruption threatened the stability of creation, the god of wisdom would rise from the deep. Thus, the second principle of the prophecy follows. Enki returns when the world enters a threshold state, neither collapsing nor thriving, but transforming. And this is precisely what modern theorists point to today: a world standing at the razor's edge of technological, ecological, and spiritual metamorphosis. Consciousness awakening, the esoteric interpretations. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, as esoteric schools rediscovered Mesopotamian mythology, a new interpretation of the Enki cycle emerged, one focused not on external events, but on internal transformation. These mystics suggested that Enki's return is symbolic of the reactivation of higher consciousness within humanity. Their reasoning was based on several textual motifs. Enki gives humans the me, the codes of civilization. Enki teaches kings the arts of wisdom, law, and interpretation. Enki warns Atrahasis of the flood, bypassing divine restrictions. Enki fashions new forms of life when old ones fail. In each case, Enki elevates humanity beyond its boundaries, spiritually, intellectually, or creatively. When the world reaches a state where the majority of humans begin questioning official narratives, seeking hidden knowledge, awakening to forgotten histories, or sensing a deep shift in reality, esoteric traditions interpret this as the stirring of Enki within the collective psyche. This idea gained further momentum in the era of global connectivity, where millions began rediscovering ancient texts and feeling a strange intuition that humanity has forgotten something essential, some primordial truth buried beneath modern noise. Thus, the third principle of the prophecy emerges. Enki returns first in the mind, through curiosity, intuition, revelation, and rediscovery. The Anunnaki framework, extraterrestrial, or archetypal. No exploration of Enki's return is complete without addressing the wider Anunnaki narrative. The controversial theory that positions Enki not merely as a mythological deity, but as a being of advanced wisdom or technology who interacted directly with early humanity. Whether one accepts this interpretation literally or symbolically, the framework itself has shaped modern conceptions of prophecy. In this view, Enki is a teacher from beyond, an architect of human advancement. His return corresponds with humanity reaching a specific technological or spiritual threshold. The signs of this threshold include global communication networks, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, and space travel, technologies that mirror the divine powers described in ancient myth. Within this paradigm, the return is not metaphorical but literal, a re-engagement or reappearance of the beings once known as the Anunnaki, triggered by humanity's entry into an age that resembles their own level of ability. Critics dismiss this as speculation, but one cannot deny the narrative power created when modern breakthroughs appear to fulfill ancient descriptions of the gods walking among men. Thus, a fourth principle arises. Enki returns when humanity becomes capable of understanding him. Whether that means scientifically, spiritually, or symbolically is open to interpretation, but the connection remains. Nibiru and the celestial cycle. The Nibiru tradition, though heavily distorted in modern retellings, originates in ancient descriptions of a mysterious celestial body associated with the crossing point in the heavens. In the Mul-Apen star catalogues, Nibiru is a marker, a regulator, an axis point used to calibrate cosmic time. Some early interpreters connected Nibiru with Enki because of its association with the deep waters, hidden paths, and cosmic transitions, domains all linked to the Lord of the Abzu. Later writers transformed Nibiru into a wandering planet. But at its core, Nibiru is not about destruction. It is about returning cycles, cosmic crossings, and moments of alignment, precisely the condition under which divine return was expected. Thus, the fifth principle of the prophecy becomes clear. Enki returns during an age of cosmic crossing, when cycles reset and new epochs begin. Precession shifts, magnetic anomalies, and solar cycles, all observed today, fit easily into this ancient interpretive framework. The prophecy of Enki's return is not a simple prediction. It is an ancient framework for understanding epochs of transformation. Enki returns when knowledge expands faster than society can understand it. The world reaches a breaking point between destruction and renewal. Humanity begins to rediscover ancient truths. Cosmic signs mirror earthly upheaval. Water, the oldest symbol of creation, becomes a global force again, and consciousness shifts toward higher perception. Whether one views Enki as a being, a symbol, a cosmic principle, or an archetype of intelligence, the prophecy carries the same message. Humanity is entering a threshold age, and thresholds are Enki's domain. In the ancient world, gods did not return quietly. They returned when everything changed, and everything now is changing. To approach the prophecy of Enki's return with intellectual integrity, one must also consider the skeptical lens, a perspective often framed not in opposition to mythic interpretation, but as an essential balancing force. Just as the ancient Sumerians believed the cosmos required harmony between opposing principles, light and shadow, law and chaos, Enlil and Enki, so too must any modern exploration allow mythic vision to coexist with grounded inquiry. In this space, skepticism becomes not a dismissal, but a tool for understanding the deeper psychological, cultural, and symbolic layers beneath the prophecy. And through this balanced lens, new insights often emerge, revealing truths hidden between the literal and the metaphorical. One of the strongest skeptical arguments is rooted in psychology, pareidolia, the tendency of the human mind to see patterns, meanings, or connections where none objectively exist. Our ancestors evolved to detect threats in the environment, predators in foliage, shapes in darkness, and this survival mechanism became intertwined with storytelling. When modern events appear chaotic or overwhelming, humanity naturally looks for narratives to impose order. Ancient prophecies provide ready-made frameworks for interpreting turbulence, offering meaning where randomness feels intolerable. Thus, a skeptic might ask, are we discerning the return of Enki, or are we superimposing ancient patterns upon modern chaos? The geopolitical fractures, technological leaps, and environmental crises might simply be the result of global complexity, not evidence of a mythic cycle. Yet even within this skepticism lies a deeper truth. Humans have always used myths to navigate uncertainty. Whether literal or symbolic, the narrative becomes a guiding force. Skeptical scholars often emphasize that prophecies do not predict events. They reveal anxieties and aspirations of the cultures that produced them. In this view, the legend of Enki's return reflects the Sumerian fear of divine silence and their longing for a wise, benevolent force capable of restoring balance. Today, as modern society faces unprecedented global turmoil, a similar longing arises. The myth of a returning wisdom giver resonates deeply because it mirrors humanity's collective desire for guidance amid uncertainty. Seen through this lens, the prophecy functions less as a cosmic forecast and more as a psychological mirror, a reflection of our internal turmoil, hopes, and fears. The revival of Enki's myth may therefore indicate not a literal awakening of ancient forces, but a cultural desire for renewal and deeper meaning. Yet this interpretation does not diminish the power of the myth. It amplifies it. For myths survive precisely because they speak to universal human experiences. Skeptics often argue that myths like Enki's return should be viewed metaphorically, not literally. Enki's return, in this interpretation, symbolizes the resurgence of wisdom, the emergence of innovation, or humanity's return to harmony with nature. The Sumerians encoded their insights into stories, and those stories continue to guide us, even if the gods themselves never physically reappear. Viewed metaphorically, the awakening of Enki may represent the rising global awareness of environmental sustainability. His gifts of knowledge may correspond to scientific breakthroughs. His return from the deep may reflect humanity's rediscovery of ancient wisdom traditions. The cosmic signs may symbolize the growing scientific understanding of the universe. This metaphorical interpretation suggests that the prophecy is fulfilled whenever humanity re-enters an age of enlightenment or transformation. In this case, modern events are not signs of a literal return, but of a symbolic one, the reactivation of our collective memory. From a strictly scientific perspective, many of the signs associated with Enki's return can be explained through natural, measurable phenomena. Geopolitical upheaval is a predictable consequence of population growth, resource scarcity, and technological disruption. Climate change results from centuries of industrial activity. Technological acceleration follows the exponential curve of Moore's law and advances in machine learning. Astronomical anomalies such as solar storms or planetary alignments are well understood cycles, not omens. A skeptic might argue that correlating these events with ancient prophecy simply reflects humanity's instinct to seek meaning in chaos. These patterns would occur regardless of mythic frameworks. Yet even within this reasoning, myth retains its symbolic force. Humans interpret reality through narratives. Even skeptics do. The question becomes not whether the prophecy is literally unfolding, but why this prophecy resonates so strongly now. Skepticism, instead of debunking the myth, often reveals its deeper cultural relevance. One of the strongest skeptical critiques is the danger of externalizing human responsibility. If people believe a god is returning to fix the world, whether as Enki, Marduk, Jesus, or a cosmic intelligence, they may abdicate responsibility for shaping their own future. The ancient myths themselves warn against this. Enki empowers humans. He teaches them arts, sciences, and strategies. He does not solve their problems for them. Thus, the prophecy of Enki's return may actually caution against passivity. In this view, the myth serves as a reminder that humans must become the agents of balance. Enki returns through us, through our choices, insights, technologies, and transformations. The responsibility remains ours. Another skeptical but illuminating perspective comes from anthropology. Many scholars argue that myths like Enki's return preserve cultural memory of long-forgotten epochs, climate events, societal collapses, astronomical cycles, or migrations. The return of the gods may encode the re-emergence of lost knowledge, recurring cycles of catastrophe and renewal, or historical events repeating across generations. If true, then the prophecy is not supernatural, but historical, a recognition that civilizations follow spiraling patterns. In this sense, interpreting modern upheavals through an ancient lens is not irrational. It is a recognition that human societies move through cycles of growth, crisis, decline, and reinvention. The return of Enki may simply symbolize the return of a recurring stage in the cycle. Perhaps the most compelling skeptical viewpoint acknowledges myths' immense value even without literal fulfillment. Myths shape identities, motivate action, and foster resilience. They speak in symbolic language that transcends time. When people invoke Enki's return, they are expressing a desire for balance amid chaos, a yearning for wisdom in an age of misinformation, a belief that humanity is capable of extraordinary transformation. From this angle, the prophecy is not diminished by skepticism, it is enriched by it. Myth gains power when understood both symbolically and psychologically. Some scholars propose a middle approach, suggesting that ancient myths may reflect interactions between human consciousness and deep archetypal forces. In this framework, skepticism keeps inquiry grounded. Myth keeps inquiry expansive. Symbolism bridges the inner and outer worlds. Enki, as an archetype of wisdom and transformation, becomes active whenever humanity faces civilizational thresholds. His return can therefore be understood as a convergence of symbolic resonance and global transition. In this model, prophecy is not prediction. Prophecy is pattern, and patterns can be read both symbolically and materially, offering insight into humanity's trajectory. Skepticism does not cancel the myth, it clarifies it. When modern physics describes the universe as a field of interconnected information, when cognitive science explores the architecture of intelligence, when anthropology traces the origins of civilization, and when neuroscience maps the roots of consciousness, The Enki myth reappears in symbolic form. Enki is the god of knowledge. Knowledge is advancing. He is the god of water. Water is reshaping the planet. He is the god of creation. Humanity is on the brink of redefining creation through biotechnology. Skepticism forces us to see the myth not as literal prophecy, but as a symbolic map of human evolution. Ironically, even skepticism fulfills an aspect of the ancient Enki narrative. In the myths, Enki is the trickster of wisdom. He invites questioning, ambiguity, and intellectual challenge. Blind belief was never his domain. Inquiry was. Thus, skepticism does not oppose the prophecy. It participates in it. For if Enki represents wisdom, discernment, and the pursuit of understanding, then every skeptical question becomes an invocation of his spirit. Whether one views Enki's return as literal, metaphorical, psychological, archetypal, extraterrestrial, or symbolic, the myth continues to evolve because it speaks to the deepest layers of human meaning. And perhaps that is the most significant message of all. Enki returns whenever we seek him, not as a figure descending from the heavens, but as the spark of wisdom rising within us. The prophecy of Enki's return, whether read as literal intervention, symbolic awakening, or archetypal resurgence, leads inevitably to one final question. What comes next? If our age truly reflects the convergence of signs, transitions, and world-shaping forces described across millennia of Mesopotamian lore, then humanity stands not at the conclusion of a myth, but at its threshold. The ancient scribes never imagined prophecy as destiny. They imagined it as orientation. It was not a script, but a compass pointing toward the direction of cosmic movement. The next phase, therefore, is not predetermined. It is unfolding. Throughout Sumerian myth, transitions are dangerous but transformative moments. Whether the tale is the birth of kingship, the flood, the creation of humanity, or the reallocation of the divine decrees, the pivotal events always occur when the world stands on uncertain ground. That is where we stand now, a liminal age. Humanity faces a convergence of unprecedented forces: climate upheaval, technological acceleration, political realignment, and spiritual reawakening. The ancients would have recognized these as the opening of a cosmic doorway. To prepare for the unknown in the spirit of Enki is not to arm oneself with fear. It is to cultivate wisdom, adaptability, and awareness, the very qualities that Enki embodied. Whether the next chapter of this prophecy unfolds through discovery, crisis, or enlightenment, the preparation is the same: a commitment to understanding ourselves, our world, and the deeper patterns shaping our future. Another pathway into the unfolding mystery lies beneath our feet, literally. New archaeological discoveries across the Near East continue to challenge long-held assumptions. Buried tablets are still being unearthed. Entire cities lie hidden beneath desert, silt, or modern construction. Technologies like LiDAR, satellite imaging, and AI-enhanced decipherment are accelerating our ability to read ancient texts and reconstruct forgotten worlds. Every year brings revelations, rewritten chronologies, unexpected cultural connections, long-lost rituals rediscovered. It is entirely possible, perhaps even likely, that a tablet or inscription exists, still buried, that offers clearer insight into the cycles of divine return. The ancient world is not silent. It is waiting. Just as Enki emerged from the Abzu to guide humanity, so too may forgotten knowledge emerge from the earth precisely the moment we need it most. Across cultures, the return of wisdom deities is tied to shifts in consciousness. The Sumerians believed that divine presence could reawaken the minds of humanity. Modern psychology describes similar thresholds, massive cultural shifts, paradigm-breaking ideas, and the evolution of collective awareness. The striking rise of global interest in ancient civilizations, metaphysics, consciousness studies, and esoteric traditions is not random. It reflects a hunger for meaning, a sense that modern life has severed itself from the mythic and the sacred. If Enki's return is symbolic, then this awakening of collective curiosity is itself a fulfillment of the prophecy. The more humanity reconnects with ancient wisdom, ethical, cosmological, or scientific, the more Enki's presence reshapes the modern age. Knowledge no longer flows downward from priests or elites. It circulates freely, mirroring Enki's desire to distribute the me to all who seek understanding. In myth, Enki is the master of creation, not in the biological sense alone, but in the conceptual sense. He shapes civilizations by offering tools, arts, sciences, and innovations. Today, technology mirrors this exact pattern. Artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, nanotechnology, decentralized communication. These are not just innovations, but world builders. They redefine what it means to be human, just as Enki once redefined humanity's purpose in the ancient myths. The next decade will likely usher in breakthroughs that feel mythic in nature. AI systems that surpass human cognitive limits. Energy transformations that rewrite geopolitics. Biotechnology capable of reshaping life. And space exploration that expands the boundaries of our story. Viewed through the Sumerian lens, these innovations are not random. They are signs of the world re-entering an age of knowledge, an age ruled not by rigidity, but by creativity, adaptability, and insight. That was always Enki's domain. If his return is symbolic, it will manifest not through appearance, but through acceleration. In the oldest versions of the Flood story, Enki's intervention is personal. He whispers through a reed wall to Atrahasis, not through a king, not through a priest, but through a single human being who listens. This narrative choice reveals something profound about how transformation occurs. Through individuals, through choices, through those who pay attention when the world begins to shift. Your role in this unfolding mystery is not passive. Whether you interpret Enki's return as cosmic, psychological, or symbolic, the myth calls for engagement. To seek knowledge, to question narratives, to awaken intuition, to observe the signs emerging across the world. The myth never asks for belief, it asks for awareness. And perhaps that is the final message of the prophecy. The gods return to those who notice them. The story does not end with this text, nor with any prediction of what might come next. The prophecy of Enki's return is a living narrative, continuously shaped by the world's events and humanity's interpretations. It evolves because we evolve. As new discoveries emerge from archaeology, astronomy, genetics, or cultural shifts, the myth adapts, revealing new layers of meaning. The ancients believed the future was a cycle, not a line. We are not heading toward an ending, but toward a transformation. Whether that transformation manifests as a crisis, a revelation, an awakening, or a literal encounter with forces beyond our current understanding remains unknown. But the myth gives us a framework. When knowledge rises from the depths, when the old world fractures, when humanity reaches a threshold, the Lord of Wisdom returns. In whichever form he appears, symbolic, cosmic, technological, or internal, the prophecy of Enki's return is not about waiting. It is about recognizing that the next chapter of the human story is beginning. and we are stepping into it now.